Hi, I'm Dr. Gary, making good bosses into great leaders with compassionate accountability. And coming on our fifth day of this, I want to talk about one of the most important parts of everything that we do, which is building relationships. I want to give you one of our approaches to building relationships as leaders and what we call the three Qs, the three questions. Our definition of leadership is the ability to build relationships so we can achieve our goals together with compassionate accountability. So leadership starts with building relationships. And yet, when you think about it, most of our lives, we're not taught how to build relationships. We're just thrown onto the playground. We're thrown into school. We're expected to get along with our brothers and sisters. However it is, we're supposed to just get along. For most of us, in a lot of ways, it's a challenge. So as leaders, it's a challenge when at the core of everything that we do is the ability to build relationships. So especially when people are starting out new, that's where the application of the three questions is so important in building the relationship. I came across this years ago when I was reading an article about an architectural professor who watched students review their final semester project, watching their nonverbals as another professor was explaining to them what they needed to do to improve this very detailed diagram of a house. He watched as the professor pointed out what needed to be different. He could hear him say, well, the staircase needs to be moved over here. And I asked you to set the house up so that they could look through and from the front of the house to the back of the house, be able to see that beautiful lake that's in the back. And there was about 4 or 5 other things that he covered. And the student, as he's talking about it, you could see the student just kind of start to shrink down because they thought they had done such a great job. They'd put weeks into this project. And this was back when you made a mistake, you had to erase a whole bunch of things. It wasn't CAD CAM on a computer where you can change it in a few minutes. He decided to do it differently because he would see the pride that the student would have. I mean, he would walk up and they would go, there it is, ta-da! And they'd be so excited. And that excitement would go away very quickly as they started to criticize what was wrong with the architectural diagram. So his approach was this, question number 1 to his student. So tell me, what do you like about what you've got here with your house? And they would say, oh, wow, I like the shape of the staircase and the way the windows are facing out and how we've got it just slightly angled so that you can see some of the trees as well as the lake. And they would talk about the bedrooms and the living room and the kitchen, how it's laid out and what they thought about as they went through all of this. The professor would then say, so tell me, if you started this project all over again, what would you do differently? And they would go, oh, well, I learned that the staircase needed to be moved over 3 feet this way in order to be able to look back and see from the front to the back as we originally described. And then the placement of the house could have been a few more degrees this way. And they would go in and describe some of the things that they learned, some of the mistakes that they felt they made. And in fact, what the teacher found out was 70 or 80% of the description were things that he was going to tell them. When he finished, he would say, well, so can I help with a few suggestions? And the student would say, of course, that's what we're here for. Think about the psychological receptivity of the student now to the input that the professor was going to give. We can do this every day at work. If you have a new task that somebody's working on and you give that to them, instead of being like the teacher and marking it up with a red pen, let's follow a leadership approach that asks them, what do they like? What would you do differently? And how can I help? Those 3 simple questions can help us create a much more open conversation about making progress, which, by the way, progress is the most motivational thing there is for most people. Not just achievement of a goal, but progress towards the goal. So whenever somebody is working on something new, focus on the 3 questions. What nuances or changes or situations might you have questions about for this? What What shifts would you have? I'll give you one, for example. Sometimes we ask in the program, instead of what did you like and what would you do differently, simply, what did you learn? What other questions do you ask in your leadership interactions that can help people grow and learn, and for you to assess the competency at the moment that is both supportive and helpful moving forward and not demeaning like those old professors? What special coaching questions do you have that you could share with all of us? Put those in the comments, because we can always learn by asking better questions. Maybe we'll hear a story or two of someone that asked a question and got a really, really interesting answer. And next week, we're going to dig deeply into that idea of compassionate accountability. If you have any other questions or you want to contact me directly, just put "Let's Talk" in the comments and I'll reach out to you with a direct message. Thank you for listening. I'm Dr. Gary, making good bosses into great leaders with compassionate accountability.